Hey, welcome back! Today, as we talk about Dante's Paradiso, we are finally past all of the planets and in the sphere of the fixed stars. As you remember from our last episode, Dante just had a review session in which he looked back all the way down to the Earth and saw each of the planets again, reminding him of each of those key ideas that he's learned on his way up here. All of those virtues. And it's a good thing because he's about to take a test. But before he takes that test, in Canto 23, he stops and has 3 visions. Okay, so maybe I should rephrase that. Technically, these aren't visions as in dreams or some sort of thing that he sees that isn't actually there. Here he gets to witness 3 very special people. Canto opens with an extended metaphor as Beatrice looks up toward the center of the sky in anticipation. It describes her as a mother bird who awaits the dawn, the light of dawn, so that she may go out and find food for her children. This mirrors the way that Beatrice is ready to feed Dante's soul with the vision that he's about to see. And as she stares at the pinnacle of the sky, awaiting the sun, we see that same sort of image. The sun is the true light that's coming, and in this case, it's Christ. And Dante himself, in seeing her excitement and anticipation, he feels that anticipation within himself. But that is not long-lived, because immediately after this, here appears Christ and the whole church. And Beatrice said, "Before you now appears the militia of Christ's triumph and all the fruit harvested from the turning of the spheres." This is the entire church. All the people he's seen on all of those planets are gathered together here around Christ. In some ways, this feels like the climax of the entire poem. He's arrived. Wait a second, aren't we just in Canto 23? We still have more to go, but this is the first taste of the final vision. This is the first taste of Dante's reward. And as Dante looks at Beatrice, as she's looking up and pointing to Christ, what he sees is too beautiful to convey. That's nothing new. And the beauty of the description here, the way that Christ, the light of Christ, lights all the souls around him is really fantastic. "I saw above 1,000,000 lights, one sun that lit them all, as our own sun lights all the bodies we see in heaven's heights. And through the living light I saw revealed the radiant substance, blazing forth so bright my vision dazzled, and my senses reeled." And in this moment, Dante realizes what Beatrice has done for him. It's almost as if her guidance finally comes to complete fruition. And he says, "Oh, my Beatrice, sweet and loving guide." He recognizes in this what she's truly been doing for him all along, how she's guided him towards this vision. We remember back to Purgatorio at the top in the earthly paradise when Dante was corrected for not appreciating her in the right way. And now he fully appreciates her and where she's brought him. Beatrice points to Christ and says, "What blinds you is the very power nothing withstands, and from which none may hide. This is the might that opened the golden road from earth to heaven. This is the Christ who saved us all." And Dante, as he looks up to try to see Christ, it's too overwhelming. And his mind can't even take it in, to the point that his mind flashes from his head like lightning flashes from a cloud. And he doesn't even really know what became of his mind in that moment. And so, even though he sees Christ, he's not really able to either see him because he's too bright, or take him in. At this point, Beatrice tells Dante to turn and look at her. So we get our second vision. "Open your eyes and turn them full on me. You have seen things whose power has made you able to bear the bright smile of my ecstasy." So we remember that Dante was no longer able to look at Beatrice while she's smiling because it would be too much for him, but his vision of Christ has strengthened him, and so now he's able to turn and actually see Beatrice with her smile as she reflects the light of Christ. So although he can't take in Christ, he can see the light of Christ as it shines through Beatrice. And he's restored to his sense in this moment as he looks at her. And at this point, Dante says to the muses, "There's nothing you could sing that could help me convey this." And so up to this point, we've been calling to the muses and calling to heavenly power to try to give us guidance to say this poem, right? Dante's been trying to find a muse to help him say this poem, and here he realizes that there's no muse strong enough to give him the power to convey the beauty of what he's saying here. And we hearken back to Canto 2, again, with the image of the boat going out into the huge ocean. My theme is massive, mortal shoulders frail for such a weight. What thoughtful man will blame me for trembling under it, for fear I fail? The seas my ardent prow is plowing here are no place for small craft, nor for a helmsman who will draw back from toil or cringe in fear. Just as Dante said, be careful if you're following me, this is going to be a hard road. Here he's saying, I don't even know how to do this road myself. I am afraid of my own failure with this poem. I am at the absolute limit of my ability. But at this point, Beatrice summons him to a third vision. She says, why are you still looking at my face when there are more things to see? Turn your eyes to the garden of flowers. And she points out specifically the rose and the lilies. The rose in the midst of this garden is the Virgin Mary. And the lilies seem to represent the apostles who we're going to meet shortly. And so Dante turns back to try to look up above him again at this vision of Christ in the whole church. At this point, though, for Dante's benefit, Christ has moved on. At times, when the sun, through broken clouds, has rayed one perfect beam, I have seen a field of flowers blazing in glory, mine own eyes still in shade. Just so, I saw the host of hosts made bright by a ray of splendor striking from above, but could not see the source of that pure light. O majesty that seals them in such glory, you raised yourself on high, withdrawing there in order that my feeble eyes might see. So Christ has withdrawn enough so that Dante can look up without being blinded, and the light is still shining down on the church and on Mary up there so that he's able to see them. And so then he turns and he sees Mary, and his heart is overwhelmed by her beauty. And as Dante's heart is poured out towards Mary, he sees a light descend and circle around her in a halo. This is the angel Gabriel, who sings a song to Mary. I am the angelic love that wheels around the lofty ecstasy breathed from the womb in which the hostel of our wish was found. So shall I wheel, Lady of Heaven, till you follow your great Son to the highest sphere, and by your presence make it holier still. And the beauty of the song just intensifies the beauty of Mary up there for Dante. And he sees how Mary just adds to the whole beauty of heaven. And the light, as Dante looks up, gets brighter and brighter and brighter towards the center as Mary begins to ascend to the point that he can't see her anymore. But at the same time, all the lights of all the church are raised up towards her as arms of children reaching towards their mother, mirroring the image of the mother yearning to feed her children at the beginning of this canto. Now we have the children reaching for their mother. But although Mary has ascended up into the next sphere, Dante is still surrounded by the church, and in particular by the apostles, who now he is going to speak with. And he speaks of them in terms of treasure. Oh, what treasures cram and overflow those richest coffers of the eternal grace, who sowed such good seed in the world below. Here is true life, and relish of the treasure, their tears laid up in the Babylonian exile, in which Christ left man gold beyond all measure. And we may hearken back to some of the other uses of the word treasure throughout Dante's book, going all the way back perhaps to Brunetto Latini, who is seeking treasure in all the wrong places. Here's true treasure. He's finally found in the words of the apostles, who will give him wisdom and guidance towards truth. And the first of them to walk up to them is the Apostle Peter. Now, Dante is going to be tested by three apostles, Peter, James, and John. And they're going to give him a test as a doctoral student who's about to defend his final test to arise to the level of his masters. And what is he going to be tested on? The three greatest virtues: faith, hope, and love. These were the first virtues we actually touched on as we arrived in Paradise. You remember how we looked at incomplete faith, incomplete hope, and incomplete love. Now Dante is going to be tested to see if he understands and has complete faith, complete hope, and complete love. At the beginning of Canto 24, Beatrice calls out to the apostles and asks them to share some of their feast with Dante. Let him partake of some of the crumbs of your great feast here. There's a couple of interesting images in this. One is the image of the Eucharist. They are feasting on Christ. And here, Dante is being able to share some of that. Also, this might be a parallel with another text that Dante wrote, the Convivio, which is the feast. In this poem, Dante has frequently corrected himself for statements he said in the Convivio, particularly in his attitude towards Beatrice, how he had, in the Convivio, praised philosophy above all else. Now he has changed his mind, and he is partaking of a sweeter feast, just like he is partaking of a greater treasure. And Dante sees the church, and particularly the apostles, spinning in this wheel of a dance where those on the outside are moving faster with greater love. One of the loveliest souls of all is Peter, who comes forward to speak to Dante. But first, he dances 3 times around Beatrice. We keep referring to the number 3, of course, as we have through the entire poem. And here, Peter's joy in being able to share with Dante and bring this task to Dante is expressed through his dance. And his song is so beautiful that Dante can't remember it, or even imagine it anymore. And he talks about it in an inexpressible way. There are no words to convey the beauty of this, as if there were a way of painting a drapery, which normally you paint folds in a drapery with dark colors in order to convey their shadow, to define them. But because there is so much brightness here, even shadow is shining as brightly as anything else. So it's impossible to capture or convey. This reminds me of a couple of books I really love. One is Annie Dillard's Pilgrim at Tinker Creek, where she talks about how shadows define the real. But here we've moved beyond even concrete realness to something realer than the real, like Plato's world of ideals. Or as C.S. Lewis envisioned heaven, something that is absolutely real. Peter responds to Beatrice and says, "Your love has called me here to respond to you." And Dante, as he listens, talks about Peter's breath. In fact, as we've talked to all the apostles, Dante's going to keep referring to their comments as their breath. He can't see them, they're just glowing so much. He's speaking more to their breath than anything else. Why the fixation on breath? Probably has something to do with the idea of inspiration and the spirit. The term breath and spirit are very carefully connected in a lot of religious writing. And they have a lot to do with the way the Spirit breathes into you and breathes life and breathes inspiration into you. And Dante at this moment is recording the most beautiful things imaginable. He's recording the center of heaven. And to some extent, he's taking on the role of an inspired scribe. And so every time we speak the word breath, he feels that inspiration. Notice that when Peter breathes, Dante writes it down. That fire of love directed its breath to my lady and spoke these words exactly as I have set them down above. So Dante takes that inspiration and he records it here in his poem. That in contrast to the unrecordable song that Peter was just singing a moment ago. And now Beatrice asks Peter to test Dante in greater and lesser points of the faith in which you once walked on the sea. It's interesting that Peter is the apostle who stands here to test Dante in his faith. Peter had a complicated relationship with the concept of faith. First of all, the point that Beatrice points out, that time you walked on water. We all remember when Jesus walked on water, but Peter did too, at least for a little while, before he began to doubt and sink. But it was his faith at first that allowed him to walk on water. Later on, we remember Peter who denied Jesus, and with that lack of faith, caused himself great grief. But he was reinstated and restored, and ultimately given the task of becoming the leader of the church. And so now he's being given the task of testing Dante in his faith. And after all, now Peter has been perfected, and now he can see things wholly. If love and hope and faith are truly his, you will discover it. for your eyes are turned where you can see the image of all that is. And when Dante is tested in his faith, Beatrice says he will better understand and be able to take in what he sees now. And here we get the test image. As a bachelor arms himself for disquisition in silence till the master sets the terms for defending, not deciding the proposition, so did I arm myself for the expression of every proof, preparing while she spoke for such an examiner and such a profession. Dante's ready to take his test, and he's sort of psyching himself up to take this big test. So Peter gives him a series of questions which Dante responds to. Question number 1, what is faith? Dante looks to Beatrice for inspiration, and then she urges him with her eyes to let the waters of the spring that welled within his soul pour free. So he's going to pour out his faith. It's time. This is your chance to shine, Dante. Before Dante begins to answer the question, though, he invokes grace. Okay, he invokes him as traveler Dante, not as poet Dante, which makes this a little bit different from some of the other invocations that Dante the poet has done throughout. But we've just now rejected the muses, if you remember. I no longer can look for inspiration among the muses. Now I'm looking for inspiration in grace. May the grace that grants the grace of this confession to the captain of the first rank, I begin, grant that my thoughts may find worthy expression. May grace guide me to express this correctly. And what is that grace? Well, it's Christ. And so Dante answers the question, what is faith, by saying, Paul said in Hebrews, faith is the substance of what we hope to see and the argument for what we have not seen. This is it. That's its essence. And Peter asks for further clarification, saying, okay, you've got those two parts, substance of things hoped for and the evidence or the argument of things not seen. Explain why he says substance first and then evidence. And Dante explores a complexity in the concept of substance, because if faith is intangible, how can it be substance? This was a problem that Thomas Aquinas brought up. And Dante breaks the word down, substance. It's something that stands underneath and supports. And so our hope is placed upon our faith. Faith is what holds up the hope. And then from that, we are able to develop our argument, our evidence. But without that starting point, we can't begin to argue. And Peter gives Dante like an attaboy. If all that mortal man may know through mortal teaching were as firmly grasped, sophist would find no listeners there below. You've got a good grasp on it so far, Dante, and nobody can dance around your argument with word games. So now you understand the value of faith, what it is. Now, Dante, do you own it? Do you have this coin in your possession? Question 2. Dante says, sure do, and it's so good a coin, it's pure, it's round, it's right. I got it. This is a well-minted coin. It's not fake, it's not been mutilated or adjusted, it is true faith. And Peter says, okay, question 3, whence comes it to you? Where does it come from? Is this image of faith as a coin connected to the treasure image that we've just seen? After all, the apostles are the ones who lead us towards faith? Probably. So where does it come from? Question 3. And Dante says it comes from the Holy Spirit through the Old and New Testaments. That's where I get my faith from. And the logic of the scriptures leaves no questions in my mind. I got it 100% sure. Question 4. So why do you trust the scripture? Asked Peter. How do you know faith from the scriptures is real? And Dante answers, because of the miracles. The miracles prove that what the scriptures say are true. And Peter says, okay, but question 5, let's make this more complicated. You say the miracles in the scripture prove that the scripture is true. Isn't that sort of defining the terms by the term itself? Aren't you saying that scripture proves itself true by something that scripture says? Don't you need an external source to make sure that it's really true? How do you know that the miracles that are said in the scripture actually happen? And Dante says, hang on, coup de grace here, because otherwise Christianity wouldn't have turned into what it did. Could the whole world have been converted without miracles? That would have been a bigger miracle than all the rest, especially in spite of all the human corruption that we see, for instance, in the papacy. And because Dante has proven things, the whole chorus of the church sings together to the glory of God. They all praise his irrefutable logic. And so now Peter's coming all the way to the very end of his questioning. So question 6, he says, the grace whose loving good has pledged itself to your mind has moved your mouth up to this point to open as it should. Good job, Dante. So far, grace has led you right. Which is great, because Dante invoked grace to help him here. But now, what is it you have faith in? And how did you get it? Question 6b. So Dante says, so for clarity, you want to know, Peter, what the form of my faith is and what my reason for faith is. He references also Peter's faith as he ran to the tomb, that he ran faster than John. And so Dante's declaration of faith is thus: I believe in one God, loved, desired by all creation, sole, eternal, who moves the turning heavens, himself unmoved. That idea of God being the center of everything and moving everything, even though he himself is unmoved by all, is an idea that we're going to continue to explore through the end of the poem. And Dante says, for this faith, I have evidence in physics, metaphysics, and in the scriptures. And I also believe in the Trinity. And Dante passes his first test! Yes! And Peter, in his joy at Dante's faith, dances around Dante 3 times. So we see Peter dancing at the beginning of the canto 3 times around Beatrice in his joy at her request. And now in Dante's victory of passing this test and showing his faith, he gets the crown of being danced around 3 times. Canto 25, Test 2. Dante begins Canto 25 still thinking about how Peter celebrated his last victory by crowning him in a dance, in this motion of dance. And Dante begins the canto by saying, if this poem that I am writing ever gets me free, if this poem ever undoes the exile that I've been cast into, then I want to go back to the baptistry where I was baptized, and I want to place the laurel of poetry upon my head at that moment, because I started my faith there, and now my faith has ultimately been crowned here in heaven. There I entered the faith that lets us grow into God's recognition, and for that faith, Peter, as I have said, circled my brow. But I also want to note that there's a key idea in this. Sure, this may be a celebration that Dante is feeling that he has succeeded in coming this far, but also it is a reflection of his hope. A hope that doesn't seem super likely and doesn't feel very physical or tangible, and yet it is a hope, something that he's holding on to. And so as Dante is reflecting on this hope, he's going to now be tested on the idea of hope. And up comes the Apostle James, and Beatrice nudges him and says, look, look, there's James. Peter and James greet each other, and Dante sees it as the dance of birds. And again, there's that image of feasting upon love. But as Dante looks at them, it is too bright for him, to the point that he is no longer able to look and he has to look down. Dante has 2 more tests to go, but we're gonna have to save them for next time. Thanks for watching. You can catch our next episode as we look at hope and love. And I'll see you later. Bye-bye.